Satoshi gave the world Bitcoin, a true something for nothing. His discovery of absolute scarcity for money is an unstoppable idea that is changing the world tremendously, just like its digital ancestor, the number zero. Zero is special. Quote, "In the history of culture, the discovery of zero will always stand out as one of the greatest single achievements of the human race." Unquote. Tobias Danzig, author of Number, The Language of Science. Many believe that Bitcoin is just one of thousands of crypto assets. This is true in the same way that the number zero is just one of an infinite series of numbers. In reality, Bitcoin is special, and so is zero. Each is an invention which led to a discovery that fundamentally reshaped its overarching system. For Bitcoin, that system is money, and for zero, it is mathematics. Since money and math are mankind's two universal languages, both Bitcoin and zero are critical constructs for civilization. For most of history, mankind had no concept of zero. An understanding of it is not innate in us. A symbol for it had to be invented and continuously taught to successive generations. Zero is an abstract conception and is not discernible in the physical world. No one goes shopping for zero apples. To better understand this, we will walk down a winding path covering more than 4,000 years of human history that led to zero becoming part of the empirical bedrock of modernity. Numerals, which are symbols for numbers, are the greatest abstractions ever invented by mankind. Virtually everything we interact with is best grasped in numerical, quantifiable, or digital form. Math, the language of numerals, originally developed from a practical desire to count things, whether it was the amount of fish in the daily catch or the days since the last full moon. Many ancient civilizations developed rudimentary numeral systems. Zero punched a hole and created a vacuum in the framework of mathematics and shattered Aristotelian philosophy, on which the power of the church was premised. Today, Bitcoin is punching the hole and creating a vacuum in the market for money. It is killing Keynesian economics, which is the propagandistic power base of the nation-state, along with its apparatus of theft, the central bank. In modernity, zero has become a celebrated tool in our mathematical arsenal. As the binary numerical system now forms the foundation of modern computer programming, zero was essential to the development of digital tools like the personal computer, the internet, and Bitcoin. Amazingly, all modern miracles made possible by digital technologies can be traced back to the invention of a figure for numeric nothingness by an ancient Indian mathematician. Brahmagupta gave the world a real something for nothing, a generosity Satoshi would emulate several centuries later. As Axel says, quote, "Numbers are our greatest invention, and zero is the capstone of the whole system," unquote. A composition of countless zeros and ones, binary code led to the proliferation and standardization of communications protocols, including those embodied in the Internet Protocol Suite. If the heavens moved linearly, then what was left in their wake? Through what substance were they moving? This implied either the existence of the void, the vacuum, or that God was not truly omnipotent as he could not move the heavens. Suddenly, Aristotelian philosophy started to break under its own weight, thereby eroding the premise of the church's power. Although the church would cling to Aristotle's views for a few more centuries, it fought heresy by forbidding certain books and burning certain Protestants alive. Zero marked the beginning of the end for this domineering and oppressive institution. An infinite universe meant there were at least a vast multitude of planets, many of which likely had their own populations and churches. Earth was no longer the center of the universe, so why should the church have universal dominion? In a grand ideological shift that foreshadowed the invention of Bitcoin centuries later, zero became the idea that broke the church's grip on humanity, just as absolute scarcity of money is breaking the Fed's stranglehold on the world today. In an echo of history, us moderns can once again hear the discovery of nothing beginning to change everything. Zero was the smooth stone slung into the face of Goliath, a death stroke to the dominion of the church. Drawings and paintings prior to the vanishing point appear flat and lifeless. Their imagery was mostly two-dimensional and unrealistic. Even the best artists couldn't capture realism without the use of zero. In the next image, I show a piece of this pre-Renaissance art. It's very flat, two-dimensional, and lifeless. And the caption reads, "Pre-Renaissance art. Still better than a banana duct taped to a canvas." A little fiat art joke there. With the concept of zero, artists could create a zero-dimension point in their work that was infinitely far from the viewer and into which all objects in the painting visually collapsed. As objects appear to recede from the viewer into the distance, they become ever more compressed into the dimensionlessness of the vanishing point, before finally disappearing. Just as it does today, art had a strong influence on people's perceptions. Eventually, Nicholas of Cusa, a cardinal of the church, declared, "Terra non est centra mundi," which meant the earth is not the center of the universe. It broke the dominion of the church and put an end to its monopolization over access to knowledge and the gates to heaven. The resultant movement, the separation of church and state, reinvigorated self-sovereignty in the world, setting the individual firmly as the cornerstone of the state. Rising from the church's ashes came a nation-state model founded on sound property rights, rule of law, and free market money, aka hard money. With this new age came an unprecedented boom in scientific advancement, wealth creation, and worldwide well-being. In the same way, Bitcoin and its underlying discovery of absolute scarcity for money is an idea whose time has come. Emerging from the depths below first principles, Bitcoin is the zeroth principle for money. Bitcoin is shattering the siege of central banks on our financial sovereignty. It is invoking a new movement, the separation of money and state, as its revolutionary banner. And it is restoring natural law in a world ravaged by a mega wealth parasite, the Fed. Only unstoppable ideas can break otherwise immovable institutions. Zero brought the church to its knees, and Bitcoin is bringing the false church of the Fed into the sunlight of its long-awaited judgment day. Both Zero and Bitcoin are emblematic of the void, a realm of pure potentiality from which all things spring forth into being, the nothingness from which everything effervesces and into which all possibility finally collapses. Zero and Bitcoin are unstoppable ideas gifted to mankind, gestures made in the spirit of something for nothing. In a world run by central banks with zero accountability, a cabal that uses the specious prospects of infinite cash to promise us everything, thereby raising the specter of hyperinflation, nothingness may prove to be the greatest gift we could ever receive. As Alfred North Whitehead said, quote, "The point about zero is that we do not need to use it in the operations of daily life. It is in a way the most civilized of all the cardinals, and its use is only forced on us by the needs of cultivated modes of thought. As our thinking became more sophisticated, so too did our demands on math. An abacus was like an ancient calculator, and as the use of zero became popularized in Europe, competitions were held between users of the abacus the abacist, and of the newly arrived Hindu-Arabic numeral system, the algorist, to see who could solve complex calculations faster. Contests like these led to the demise of the abacus as a useful tool. Words calculate, calculus, and calcium are all derived from the Latin word for pebble, calculus. And the caption reads, "The algorist competing against the abacist." For the Hindu-Arabic numerals, money counters had to use the abacus or a counting board to keep track of value flows. Germans called the counting board a Rechenbank, which is why moneylenders came to be known as banks. Not only did banks use counting boards, but they also used tally sticks to keep track of lending activities. The monetary value of a loan was written on the side of a stick, and it was split in two pieces, with the lender keeping the larger piece, known as the stock, which is where we get the term stockholder. Then I show in the next image a picture of that stick broken in two pieces, and the caption reads, "An ancient loan tracking device called a tally stick. The lender kept the larger portion, the stock, and became a stockholder in the bank that made the loan." Despite its superior utility for business, governments despised zero. In 1299, Florence banned the Hindu-Arabic numeral system. As with many profound innovations, zero faced vehement resistance from entrenched power structures that were threatened by its existence. Once started down a particular pathway, breaking away from its socio-political inertia can become impossible. For instance, imagine if the world tried to standardize to a different size of electrical outlet. Consumers, manufacturers, and suppliers would all resist this costly change unless there was a gigantic prospective gain. To coordinate this shift in standardization would require either a dramatically more efficient technology, a pull method by which people stand to benefit, or an imposing organization to force the change, a push method in which people would be forced to change in the face of some threat. Path dependence is why occurrences in the socio-political domain often influence developments in the technical. U.S. citizens saw path-dependent pushback firsthand when their government made a failed attempt to switch to the metric system back in the 1970s. Bitcoin was launched into the world as a one-of-a-kind technology, a non-state digital money that is issued on a perfectly fixed, diminishing, and predictable schedule. It was strategically released into the wild, into an online group of cryptographers, at a time when no comparative technology existed. Bitcoin's organic adoption path and mining network expansion are a non-repeatable sequence of events. As a thought experiment, consider that if a new Bitcoin was launched today, it would exhibit weak chain security early on, as its mining network and hash rate would have to start from scratch. Today, in a world that is aware of Bitcoin, this new Bitcoin with comparatively weak chain security would inevitably be attacked, whether these were incumbent projects seeking to defend their head start, international banking cartels, or even nation states. The next image, I show a chart of Bitcoin's hash rate and how much it's been growing over time. And the caption reads, "Bitcoin's head start and hash rate is seemingly insurmountable." Path dependence protects Bitcoin from disruption, as the organic sequence of events which led to its release and assimilation into the marketplace cannot be replicated. Further, Bitcoin's money supply is absolutely scarce, a totally unique and one-time discovery for money. Money arises naturally as the most tradable thing within a society. This includes exchanges with others and with our future selves. Scarcity is the trait of money that allows it to hold value across time, enabling us to trade it with our future selves for the foregone opportunity costs, the things we could have otherwise traded money for had we not decided to hold it. Scarce money accrues value as our productivity grows. For these reasons, the most scarce technology, which otherwise exhibits sufficient monetary traits, divisibility, durability, recognizability, portability, tends to become money. Said simply, the most relatively scarce money wins. In this sense, what zero is to math, absolute scarcity is to money. Be Interstellar, and in the caption I wrote, actual footage of Bitcoin devouring all fiat currencies. Bitcoin is the global economic singularity, the ultimate monetary center of gravity, an exponential devourer of liquid value in the world economy, the epitome of time, and the 0 point of money. Fiat currency always falls to zero. Bitcoin will allow sovereignty to once again adhere at the individual level instead of being usurped at the institutional level as it is today, all thanks to its special forebear, zero. The only answer is the only money with a 0% terminal inflation rate, Bitcoin. Unlike central bankers who are fallible human beings that give in to political pressure to pillage value from people by printing money, Bitcoin's monetary policy does not bend for anyone. It gives zero fucks. And in a world where central banks can just add zeros to steal your wealth, people's only hope is a zero fucks money that cannot be confiscated, inflated, or stopped. In the next image, I show a tweet by Jason Williams, who wrote, "A trillion really isn't that big a number anymore, especially when the Fed can just add zeros to a spreadsheet and make magic helicopter Fed money appear. Here's a quick guide to the zero adding QE steal your wealth game." And he shows a chart of numbers and how many zeros they have after them. So a 10 has 1 0, 100 has 2 zeros, 1,000 has 3 zeros, so on and so forth. This goes up to all the way up to a novemdecillion, which appears to have 20 zeros after it. The point being, which I write in the caption, central banks literally just add zeros to steal vast swaths of societal wealth. Bitcoin was specifically designed as a countermeasure to expansionary monetary policies, aka wealth confiscation via inflation, by central bankers. Bitcoin is a true 0-to-1 invention, an innovation that profoundly changes society instead of just introducing an incremental advancement. Bitcoin is ushering in a new paradigm for money, nation-states, and energy efficiency. In the same way, zero is the door from positive to negative numbers, each being a perfect reflection of the other. Zero arose in the ancient East as the epitome of this deeply philosophical and experiential concept of absolute emptiness. Empirically, today, we now know that meditation benefits the brain in many ways. It seems, too, that its contribution to the discovery of zero helped forge an idea that would forever benefit mankind's collective intelligence, a sort of software upgrade to our global hive mind. Despite being discovered in a spiritual state, zero is a profoundly practical concept. Perhaps it is best understood as a fusion of philosophy and pragmatism. By traversing across zero into the territory of negative numbers, we encounter the imaginary numbers, which have a base unit of the square root of -1, denoted by the letter I. As a pre-Bitcoin thought experiment, had a new gold been discovered in the Earth's crust, assuming it was mostly distributed evenly across the surface and was exactly comparable to gold in terms of these 5 monetary traits, with the exception that it was more scarce, free market dynamics would have led to its selection as money, as it would be that much closer to absolute scarcity, making it a better means of storing value and propagating price signals. Seen this way, gold as a monetary technology was the closest the free market could come to absolutely scarce money before it was discovered in its only possible form, digital. The supply of any physical thing can only be limited by the time necessary to procure it. If we could flip a switch and force everyone on Earth to make their sole occupation gold mining, the supply of gold would soon soar. Unlike Bitcoin, no physical form of money could possibly guarantee a permanently fixed supply. So far as we know, absolute scarcity can only be digital. Digitization is advantageous across all 5 traits of money. Since Bitcoin is just information, relative to other monetary technologies, we can say its divisibility is supreme, as information can be infinitely subdivided and recombined at near zero cost, like numbers. Its durability is supreme, as information does not decompose. Books can outlast empires. Its portability is supreme, as information can move at the speed of light, thanks to telecommunications. And its recognizability is supreme, as information is the most objectively discernible substance in the universe, like the written word. Finally, and most critically, since Bitcoin algorithmically and thermodynamically enforces an absolutely scarce money supply, we can say that its scarcity is infinite. Bitcoin is ushering in a new paradigm for money, nation-states, and energy efficiency. Most importantly, it promises to break the cycle of criminality in which governments continuously privatize gains via seigniorage and socialize losses via inflation. Time and time again, excessive inflation has torn societies apart, yet the lessons of history remain unlearned. Once again, here we are. The next image I show a meme that says, "Anyone who has ever opened a history book in their life, please, sweet baby Jesus, do anything to fix this economic crisis other than print more fucking money. I am fucking begging you." And then it shows the government's reaction, which is, "Ha ha ha, money printer go brrr." And in the caption I said, "Thank you, internet, for all the hilarious yet meaningful memes." The 0 hour. How much longer will monetary socialism remain an extant economic model? The countdown has already begun. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Liftoff. Rocket technicians always wait for 0 before ignition. Countdowns always finalize at the 0 hour. Oil price wars erupting in Eurasia, a global pandemic, an unprecedented expansionary monetary policy response, and another quadrennial Bitcoin inflation rate halving. 2020 is quickly becoming the 0 hour for Bitcoin. Like its distant progeny Bitcoin would later be, 0 was an unstoppable idea whose time had come. And in the next image I show the famous quote by Victor Hugo, who wrote that, quote, "There is nothing more powerful than an idea whose time has come," unquote. Functions of 0. 0's first function is as a placeholder in our numeric system. For instance, notice the 0 and the number 1104 in the equation above, which indicates the absence of value in the tens place. Without 0 acting as a symbol of absence at this order of magnitude in 1104, the number could not be represented unambiguously. Without 0, is it 1104 or 114? Lacking 0 detracted from a numeral system's capacity to maintain constancy of meaning as it scales. When a money's roots to economic reality are severed, as happened when the peg to gold was broken and fiat currency was born, its supply inevitably trends towards infinity in hyperinflation, and the functioning of its underlying society deteriorates towards zero in economic collapse. An unstoppable free market alternative, Bitcoin is anchored to economic reality through proof-of-work energy expenditure and has an inflation rate predestined for zero, meaning that a society operating on a Bitcoin standard would stand to gain in virtually infinite ways. When Bitcoin's inflation rate finally reaches zero in the mid-22nd century, the measure of its soundness as a store of value, the stock-to-flow ratio, will become infinite. People that realize this and adopt it early will benefit disproportionately from the resultant mass wealth transfer. Zero and infinity are reciprocal. 1 divided by infinity equals 0, and 1 divided by 0 equals infinity. In the same way, a society's well-being shrinks towards zero the more closely the inflation rate approaches infinity through the hyperinflation of fiat currency. Conversely, societal well-being can, in theory, be expanded towards infinity the more closely the inflation rate approaches zero through the absolute scarcity of Bitcoin. Remember, the Fed is now doing whatever it takes to make sure there is infinite cash in the banking system, meaning that its value will eventually fall to zero. Market value of money always converges to its marginal cost of production. Infinite cash means dollars will inevitably become as valuable as the paper on which they are printed. Zero arose in the world as an unstoppable idea because its time had come. Finally, and most critically, since Bitcoin algorithmically and thermodynamically enforces an absolutely scarce money supply, we can say that its scarcity is infinite. As scarce as time, the substance money is intended to tokenize in the first place. Taken in combination, these traits make absolutely scarce digital money seemingly indomitable in the marketplace. In the same way that the number 0 enables our numeric system to scale and more easily perform calculation, so too does money give an economy the ability to socially scale by simplifying trade and economic calculation. Said simply, scarcity is essential to the utility of money, and a zero-growth terminal money supply represents perfect scarcity, which makes Bitcoin as near a perfect monetary technology as mankind has ever had. Absolute scarcity is a monumental monetary breakthrough. Since money is valued according to reflexivity, meaning that investor perceptions of its future exchangeability influence its present valuation, Bitcoin's perfectly predictable and finite future supply underpins an unprecedented rate of expansion in market capitalization. The pristine predictability of Bitcoin creates reflexivity without precedent. Few will understand this until it's too late. Bitcoin is truly unique, a perfectly scarce and predictably supplied money. In summary, the invention of Bitcoin represents the discovery of absolute scarcity or absolute irreproducibility, which occurred due to a particular sequence of idiosyncratic events that cannot be reproduced. Any attempt to introduce an absolutely scarce or diminishing supplied money into the world would likely collapse into Bitcoin, as we saw with the Bitcoin Cash fork. Absolute scarcity is a one-time discovery, just like heliocentrism or any other major scientific paradigm shift. In a world where Bitcoin already exists, a successful launch via a proof-of-work system is no longer possible due to path dependence. Yet another reason why Bitcoin cannot be replicated or disrupted by any other crypto asset using this consensus mechanism.